A very good evening to Tipis and good evening to our viewers. It is really quiet here outside the Estcourt Correctional facility since we arrived midday. In fact, even from the morning when my colleague Jayed-Leigh Paulse was still here. Really quiet today, Tipis. So we have seen earlier on that there was quite a strong police presence outside the facility, also aided by the Correctional Services members of the emergency support team, the STUs. As you see, the main road leading to the entrance of the facility or the center is closed off, and these members of the emergency support team continue to stand guard, and they've been monitoring vehicles and people that have been coming through. Earlier on in the afternoon, we saw a vehicle that we often see traveling with in the convoy with the former president. That's the first vehicle that we have seen go into the prison, the correctional center, and it stayed for about an hour or so and then left the center. At the point from where we were at Zapiso, because of the vehicles being so dark and at the windows tinted, we could not see who was inside that vehicle, but that is so much as we believe that could possibly be someone who had come to possibly meet or see the former president who is in this center behind us. But apart from that, they're obviously speaking to supporters of the former president. You'd know that yesterday some had gathered here, and of course that arrest then of the spokesperson of Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association, Carl Niehaus. So that seems to have then led to people rather saying that they're not going to then come out here today, but that is likely going to change over the next couple of days, in particular on Sunday ahead of the Constitutional Court sitting on Monday. As you know, that the former president, of course, has filed that application, that rescission application. So they are expecting that over the weekend there could be people that are going to be coming out here to show their support for the former president in anticipation of that hearing on Monday. You're speaking earlier on, Tsepiso, about what happened this morning at 11:30 at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We know that, of course, today was the day when the court was going to rule on the stay application by the former president, and as we've been reporting, that application was dismissed. But for more on that story, let's take a listen to this insert.
In a very brief virtual court proceeding, Judge Bhekisisa Mnguni handed down the ruling and read out his order. The reasons for his final judgment were not heard in court.
The order is as follows. The following order shall issue. The application is dismissed with such costs to include those occasioned by the employment of senior counsel. I hand down the judgment.
Advocate Dalimpofu, who represented the former president, argued that the High Court did have jurisdiction to issue an interdict to stay the execution of Zuma's arrest. Legal teams representing the Helen Suzman Foundation, the Commission of Inquiry into Allegations of State Capture, and Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo opposed this, arguing that the court could not interfere in con-court matters.
All this court must be interested in: do I have in front of me an applicant who meets the requirements for the relief that is sought? And that is important, my lord, because remember there are two types of reliefs before your lordship. One is, let's call it a common law interdict, the normal common law interdict. The other one is a suspension order in terms of section 172 of the Constitution. That's the nature of the relief sought before your lordship.
Yes.
I don't think there's anyone who can argue that your lordship does not have jurisdiction to issue a suspension order in terms of section 172 of the Constitution. If there is such a person, then they will be hugely mistaken.
If one looks at the text of section 173 of the Constitution, the text is inherent power is the heading. The wording is the Constitutional Court, Supreme Court of Appeal, and High Courts have the inherent power to protect and regulate their own process and to develop the common law, taking into account the interests of justice. Your Lordship pointed to this own process. So you do have inherent power, but inherent power over your own process, not over the process of the Constitutional Court.
Taking all arguments into account, Judge Mnguni ruled in favor of advocates Ngcukai Toby and Max du Plessis. In his written judgment, the judge concluded that, quote, should this court accede to the contentions advanced on behalf of Mr. Zuma, then the hierarchy will be disturbed and there will be no finality to legal decisions. He went on to add that the application made by the former president's legal team seeks to entangle the High Court in a situation where the court goes beyond its territory, disrupting the balance of power. While the former president will remain behind bars this weekend, on Monday, the Constitutional Court will hear Zuma's application for a rescission of his 50-month sentence for contempt.
As his lordship pleases. Estcourt pleases.
Well, that High Court, that judgment by the Pietermaritzburg High Court was a blow to the former president. His legal team had indeed hoped that had they been successful, it could have meant that the former president would have been given an opportunity to at least go home for the weekend, as he will then await to hear what the judges in the Constitutional Court are going to decide come that hearing on Monday. Of course, today will be the second night that the former president will spent here at the Estcourt Correctional Facility. And while he is behind bars, a lot was taking place throughout the province of Kwazulu-Natal, with protests erupting from the early hours of this morning. My colleague Jayed-Leigh Paulse has been following the protesters in Durban. Let's cross to her now to see what the situation is like in Durban. Jade?
Hello. Evening to you, Tapiso, and to the viewers back at home. We have been traveling on the N3 and now we are finding ourselves on the M4, just tracking that protest action that happened in KwaZulu-Natal earlier on. There were flare-ups in several parts and several districts of KZN, such as Mhlongo, Mandeni Municipality, Kwadukuza as well, and Pietermaritzburg, where we saw some Kele Maseko reporting earlier on, where there was a huge protest action on the N3 and there was traffic backlog. Just driving from Estcourt Correctional Facility, where we left this afternoon about 2 hours ago, on the N3, the roads seem to be very clear, Tapiso. There has been police presence on the road. There was some protest action in Moy River when we passed there, but that group was broken up by the police and then traffic started flowing. We are now on the M4 heading towards Belita, where we are told that there is some backlog of traffic at Mandeni Municipality, just coming into that municipality, so we expect quite a lot of traffic. They're not too sure if there are protesters still on site or still on the road there. We must make mention of the fact that we do not know if the protest action is in relation to what is currently happening to former President Jacob Zuma, or for support in him, or support for him rather. But I just see, so there has been a statement that has been released by Brigadier Vish Naidu. If I can just read it for the viewers back at home. It says here, the South African Police Service in KwaZulu-Natal is working closely with the National Prosecuting Authority, the NPA, to formulate charges in respect of the protest actions, which includes malicious damage to property, arson, looting and blocking, and the damage of national roads in and around Durban. These actions have clearly emanated from the calls that were made by certain prominent persons via the mainstream and social media space. These prominent individuals will most likely be the ones facing these charges, and they will be called to account for these and any other crimes that may occur in the future. And that statement was released by Brigadier Vish Naidu. So we'll be monitoring that closely, possibly to see if it is in relation to former President Jacob Zuma's incarceration at Estcourt Correctional Facility. We do know that over this weekend we are expecting a lot of supporters to rally behind him as we approach Monday, where the Constitutional Court will deliver its ruling.